A college admissions consulting company called Crimson Education is promising to get your kids, if you have them, ready to apply to Ivy League schools, preferably when they're as young as 11 years old. Because people are insane. This is the society we live in. So it's only gonna cost you between like tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, so no biggie. Crimson Education offers a number of services, all based around polishing your resume for your 11-year-old, I guess, for your college applications. So let's get into some of the advice, some of the consultations they provide. Optimize childhood by starting to build skills and interests years before high school. Strategically choose areas where you can excel. If you aren't going to be a top performer in an activity, drop it and move to something else. And find ways to be unique, whether through entrepreneurship, scholarship, or well-placed PR. And by the way, if you haven't gotten the point yet, these services start real young. Crimson likes to start working with students at age 11 to build their study and time management skills before high school begins. And Crimson Education boasts that their clients get into top schools at a much, much higher rate than regular applicants. Let's take a look at this graphic and you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. So Crimson students get into the top 15 colleges at over 6 times the general rate. The general rate is 5.2%. The Crimson rate is 34.5%. So I've got more details about this. I don't know why I'm irritable as I'm presenting all the details. Maybe it's because these children are having their childhoods robbed from them. I think an 11-year-old should engage in hobbies that he or she enjoys. I think that makes life a lot more fulfilling. It enriches your life to be able to explore and be curious about different things. I think that it's good to allow kids to fail at something and continue practicing if they want to, if they love the hobby until they improve. I just think this is creating a nation of robots, of elite robots. And we already have tech companies working on that. We don't need people to turn into robots.
Yeah, but once they had that successful Buttigieg model, they're like, we shall make more Buttigiegs, give me an assembly line of Buttigiegs. Okay. So guys, I come at it from a little bit different perspective than Anna, in that almost everyone I know would love to have their kids go to this thing. I went to some of these schools. I understand the value of going to these schools. I want my kids to go to these schools. I'll explain why in a second. But still, there was something that deeply bothered me about this story. And I thought about it and I figured it out. I'm gonna solve that mystery for you a little bit later as we explain the facts to you, okay?
Okay. Well, look, it is very hard to get into these Ivy League schools, and in recent years, it has become even more challenging, even more competitive. The number of students applying to the top universities in the US has increased about 5-fold over the past 3 decades, while the increase in class sizes at Ivy League universities is negligible. Admission rates are now below 5% at schools such as Harvard and Yale, down from about 20% 2 generations ago. Cenk, when you got into these Ivy Leagues, not as impressive, Mr. Hotshot Columbia Law graduate.
No, by the way, that is enormously true. The grades that I had and the scores that I had, no way I get into those schools today. So it got way harder. That's part of why people are charging $100,000 and starting at the age of 11. So they explain like the bare minimum, and it's brutal. You have to like be in all honors and AP classes. You have to get 5s on the AP test. The average for the ones that got into the Ivies through this was like 15 something, like 1536 or something like that. The max is 1600. It's getting past 1500 is so hard. Okay, but those are table stakes. That doesn't mean you're getting in. That's just the bare minimum you have to do, and there's a couple other things.
Did someone say stakes?
So look, in my life, school has made all the difference, and so that's why I have great empathy for the parents here, or at least some of the parents. And so my dad was a very poor farmer, had no chance at any kind of life that we found in America eventually. And he got there because they had an opportunity to get into the best school in Turkey in engineering. But back then it was free in Turkey, right? So he didn't have to go to these classes, etc. He worked his ass off, got there, and it took us from very poor to eventually upper middle class. And that's all the difference in the world. And I went to a couple of these schools, and as they were reading through the story in Columbia and Penn, I have to confess, and it's super annoying, and I feel bad about it, and it's unbearable, but I was a little proud, like, oh, they were trying to get into those schools, etc. But that's not the main point at all. The point is, even in my life, those schools did open some doors. I thought in the beginning they weren't gonna open any doors, and it didn't help me at all in the beginning, but by the time I formed this company, they did wind up helping, not the schools themselves, but the reputation that comes with it. And I hate that that's true, but unfortunately it is true, right? So that's why among the reasons, I view that as the legitimate reasons to be this concerned about it, right? But as I read the story, it dawned on me, and I'm like, I know why I hate this so much. Because I have the same visceral reaction you're having, Anna. Like, man, this bothers me. Like taking an 11-year-old kid, making them work their ass off just so da da da. And
have
I realized,
you guys met an 11-year-old? Like, the 11-year-old has a lot of time left in his or her life to be miserable, okay? Second, that 11-year-old turns into an 18-year-old and has to work and is an adult, hell. So like, why start the hell early?
well,
I get it, yes, you want them to go to Harvard and be a good sociopath for the American community, I get it.
no, but that's gonna lead to the answer that I discovered for most of these parents, unfortunately, or a lot of these parents. So because guys, nowadays you have this pressure as a parent no matter what. So it's not just about the Ivy League schools, it's also about sports. So if you don't start your kid at the age of 3 on a sport, they're screwed. They're never going to be at the college level, professional level, etc. So by the time my kids got to be 5 and I hadn't trained them to be superstars, I started feeling guilty, right? Oh and now they're 12 and 14, it's nearly hopeless. So and people judge you too, and that gets me to my answer. So some parents understand its value and care about their kids, and that's why they're doing it. But tons of other parents are doing it for the status. So they're having their kids throw away their childhood, work 24 hours a day, put endless stress on them so they can tell their friends, oh, my son is going to Harvard.
Totally.
My daughter just got into Stanford.
I think I disagree with you actually. I don't think that there are two camps of parents. Like the parents who really want to set their kids up for success in the future, and then there's the camp of parents who only care about success. I think every parent who wants to do this has a little bit of both as their reasoning for doing it. They do want their kids to succeed. Like, look, I don't mean to be overly harsh toward the parents. I actually do think the parents want their kids to have successful futures and they think this is the way to do it. But yeah, there's also the bragging rights that comes with it. Like my parents wanted to ensure that they gave me, I mean, they didn't have much as immigrants who had nothing. They gave me everything they could give me to set me up for success. But anytime I succeeded, of course my mom loved to brag about it. That's what it means to be a parent. You want to brag about your kids, that's totally fine.
That's certainly true, but for someone like my dad, since it changed his life from incredibly poor with no electricity to living in a nice house in the suburbs of New Jersey, you can see why he thought, no, I gotta work as hard as I can to make sure my kids have an opportunity to go to the best possible schools.
I definitely agree, I understand that. I agree with what you're saying there. And I just think that when your dad came to the United States and he got an education and all of that stuff, and it really did lift him up, that was a different time in America. Things have changed. I think that for some people, an Ivy League school is gonna make all the difference, but the country's changing technologically. There is a shortage of trade workers in this country. And honestly, as AI improves, the trade workers will reign supreme, okay? That's why you have an entire generation of Gen Z and even younger thinking about foregoing college and instead opting for the trades. And I admire that.
Yeah, no, I get it, but everybody has different goals. Yeah. And look, for me, I told my kids, look, I want you to get straight. I want you to be in all the honors classes, and I want you to get straight A's because I know you're capable of it. And so if you're capable of it and you don't do it, then you made a choice, and I don't want you to make that choice. I want you to make a better choice. I'm a parent, and I got to do the best for them, right? But at the same time, I'm not saying you have to go to 8 different events and you have to build your resume and you have to just not have a life. No, we watch all the Marvel series together. We go to parks, we go and we touch grass, okay? And I'm trying to give them the best childhood they could possibly have while learning responsibility and discipline and doing their homework and getting A's. But to me, it isn't anything about status. I don't need them to do that. I already did it. I don't need extra stuff on my resume. That's so like that really bothers me. Guys, we've got to come up with a better system because we are robbing these children of their childhood, and I hate it.
Yeah, and we're all gonna die. Like I think people forget that. We all have a limited amount of time on this planet, and there are all these little pleasures in real life that you're denying yourself or denying your kids because there's this obsession with the status, with success. And look, success is a wonderful thing. I think you can opt for success without literally robbing your kids of their childhoods, which is a wonderful time where they should be exploring, where they should be allowed to be more curious. A few more details about this story because it's so incredible. So Crimson is telling families that it can help beat the odds of getting into these universities, but at a price. So clients pay the firm from $30,000 to $200,000 for a 4 to 6 year program that includes tutoring in academics and test taking and advice on how to gather stellar teacher recommendations and how to execute extracurricular projects. Those can range from writing a book to publishing an academic research paper or starting a podcast. By the way, in order to do things like, starting a podcast or being able to forge the kind of relationship with educators where they would write you a wonderful recommendation, you'd need to have social skills. Social skills. Social skills matter. So allowing your children to have a life outside of this weird regimented, obsessed with success, programming and mentality, like let them go out and have friends, let them enjoy their childhoods. I think that's gonna be far more beneficial. Final thing I'll say is, I think if you put someone who's a little socially awkward but has an Ivy League degree up against someone who really knows how to schmooze, the person who knows how to schmooze and make a case for themselves and has tenacity and ambition is always gonna beat out the person who's got the credentials.
Yeah, so last things I'll say is, so look, the people who go to this school for $200,000 or whatever, remember they're going to a real school where they have to get nothing but A's at the hardest classes. Then they go to this school, and then they have to then do. He recommends about 8 to 10 extracurricular projects.
Only 8 to 10.
Only 8 to 10, though.
Okay, got it.
And he says, but once you find your expertise, then hone in on those 2 things where you think you can beat everyone. Okay, but so they already had a high chance of getting in. And they were already wealthy, so that allowed them to have private counselors outside of this. They already had every kind of preparation. They were already trying hard. They were already getting good grades. So they brag about good admission rates. But if you give me all the students who are the richest and trying the hardest and already had good grades, I'll give you excellent returns too, right? Look, I don't mind the brother that's doing this. I think that he worked his way up. He's from New Zealand. He wasn't born rich.
He's raking it in, of course.
And
yeah,
he
do
went
your
to
thing.
all these amazing schools and he did all these amazing things. And then he brags and he says, when I was at Harvard, I never went to a single party or to a single football game. Congratulations.
Yeah, he's 29-year-old Jamie Beaton. He really took a beating when it came to his social life, but he says it was great. He's in favor of it. He has a ton of degrees. He's got a PhD in public policy from the University of Oxford, 2 masters from Stanford, and one in business and the other in education technology, a master's in education entrepreneurship from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's in finance from Princeton. Like, you didn't do anything with all these degrees? Like, why do you have all these degrees?
No, well, he set up this company and now his company's worth a lot of money.
Great, you didn't need all the degrees for the company.
No, but he kind of did in this case. So that's why I'm saying it does open some doors. This brother takes it too far. One day he's gonna realize that his life passed him by though.
100%.
And then he's gonna go, oh my God, what I would do and what I would pay to be 17 again, to be 13 again. And so the last thing that set me off a little bit was, look, you wanna teach them to be entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur, I love it. You wanna teach them to get great grades, I love it. But the part where Anna read you in the first place when they said, they also help them with well-placed PR. No. If you're hiring people to do marketing for your kids to get them into a school, you've gone too far.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.